Good afternoon. First of all, let me thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak in this conference. So my topic is, how do we manage insulin resistance? Now coming to insulin resistance in PCOS. So there are the pathogenesis. You have a genetic predisposition to excess ovarian androgen secretion, which leads to insulin resistance and/or hyperinsulinemia. This in turn can lead to anovulation. And you also have increased LH, which is a defect. And this increased LH can lead to increased testosterone levels, which in turn can lead to hirsutism. The increased insulin resistant and hyperinsulinemia can act at the level of the liver to reduce SHBG. So you have more free testosterone, and that can lead to hirsutism. To the magnitude of insulin resistance in PCOS, hyperinsulinemia and insulin resistance affect approximately 50 to 80% of women with PCOS. The metabolic abnormalities are more prevalent in overweight, obese women. There's an exaggerated circulating insulin levels and reduced insulin-mediated glucose metabolism found in up to 40% of non-obese subjects. The link between insulin resistance and PCOS seems to be genetic in origin. So during puberty and adulthood, circumstances such as unbalanced diet, sedentary lifestyle, and ultimately can lead to excessive body weight gain because of these habits. And they may trigger the clinical appearance of metabolic disturbances in these women. Hyperandrogenemia and hyperinsulinemia may potentiate each other, thus perpetuating a vicious cycle in some women with PCOS. So insulin resistance leading to PCOS and PCOS leading on to insulin resistance. It's a chicken and egg story. We all know that in patients with PCOS, you have insulin resistance. And if you treat with insulin sensitizers, insulin resistance improves. And the improvement in the insulin resistance can actually lead to improvement in the chronic anovulation, or the ovulatory dysfunction improves. We know this. You also have hyperandrogenism. And if you treat them with anti-androgens, yes, we know that it improves the hyperandrogenism, but then we are not sure whether it can improve the chronic anovulatory dysfunction. Also, treatment with insulin sensitizers could improve the hyperandrogenism, but treatment with anti-androgens, whether it improves insulin resistance, is a question mark. So coming to the drugs used for insulin resistance in PCOS, you have metformin, the GLP-1 receptor agonist, the TZDs or thiazolidinediones, and newer drugs. Coming to metformin. So what are the recommendations? The JCM 2013 publication. It may be used in patients with PCOS who have type 2 diabetes or IGT who fail lifestyle modification. For women with PCOS with menstrual irregularity who cannot take or do not tolerate hormonal contraceptives, we suggest metformin as second-line therapy. And we suggest the use of metformin as an adjuvant therapy for infertility to prevent OHHS in women with PCOS undergoing IVF. The international evidence-based guidelines for the assessment and management of PCO, what they say is metformin, where lifestyle interventions are not sufficient, metformin may be used for the prevention of weight gain, hormonal and metabolic outcomes, and for prevention of weight gain and metabolic outcomes in women with PCOS with a BMI more than 25 kg per meter square, you could actually use this. And metformin resulted better than placebo for BMI, testosterone, total cholesterol, and triglycerides. So when only participants with a BMI more than 25 kg per meter square were combined, additive benefits for weight, BMI, total cholesterol, and LDL was found. So in patients with a BMI more than 25. Also, metformin improved menstrual pattern, ovulation rate, and clinical pregnancy rate in PCOS. This is from the Cochrane database of systemic reviews. So this is a forest plot of comparison of metformin versus placebo or no treatment. Outcome was live birth rate. So if you see, these are older studies, of course. Participants with a BMI less than 30 kg per meter square, around 185 participants were there. So a trend towards metformin was there. With the BMI more than 30, once again, a trend towards metformin was there. And totally, if we see, it almost favored metformin for live birth rate. And this is another forest plot of comparison, metformin combined with clomiphene citrate versus clomiphene citrate alone. Once again, if you take BMI less than 30 or more than 30, a trend towards the combination is there. So overall, the combination is slightly better than metformin, clomiphene alone. What about metformin in pregnancy with PCOS? So a recent trial published in the Lancet Diabetes Endocrinology in 2019, use of metformin to treat pregnant women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial. So involving around 391 women on metformin and placebo 399. So the primary outcome was the late miscarriage and preterm delivery, and that was statistically significant. The group with the metformin did better. The secondary outcome was on gestational diabetes, and there was no much change between the two groups. So the tertiary outcome was weight gain until week 36, and that was actually better in the metformin group. The interpretation from this, or the conclusion, was in pregnant women with PCOS, metformin treatment from the late first trimester until delivery might reduce the risk of late miscarriage and preterm birth, but does not prevent gestational diabetes. There are adverse effects of metformin, like GI symptoms include abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, taste disturbance, and appetite loss. Coming to the next drug, the thiazolidinediones. It acts by stimulation of fatty acid uptake and storage in the subcutaneous adipose tissue. This is a drug which increases the fat, but still the patient becomes insulin sensitive. We call it as the fatty acid steal mechanism. There's an enhancement of adiponectin secretion from adipose, which increases insulin sensitivity, particularly in the liver. It inhibits hepatic gluconeogenesis. It ameliorates dyslipidemia, promotes anti-inflammatory and anti-atherosclerotic effects. Pioglitazone have been found to improve menstrual pattern in PCOS. This is from the Cochrane database. No difference between pioglitazone and placebo as far as anthropometric outcomes, that is a BMI, waist-hip ratio, endocrine outcomes, testosterone, SHBG, or metabolic outcomes, which was fasting insulin. And among the glitazones, rosiglitazone had the most favorable effect on PCOS patients in terms of DHEAS, total testosterone, FSH, and LH. Metformin performed better in terms of estradiol, free testosterone, and androstenedione. There are a lot of side effects as a result of which we hardly use it. Weight gain, fatigue, edema, diarrhea, anemia, congestive heart failure, increased risk of osteoporosis, and query bladder cancer. And in pregnancy, it's a category C drug, and we don't use this drug. Myoinositol or inositols, the mechanism of action. Inositols, in particular, the active molecule, myoinositol, and the D-chiroinositol, support the intracellular formation of the insulin second messengers, the PIP3, the phosphatidyl inositol triphosphate, and inositol phosphoglycan. The insulin resistance is associated with reduced availability of D-chiroinositol and with increased urinary clearance of D-chiroinositol in both PCOS and non-PCOS women with insulin resistance. So there is possibly a use of this drug as an insulin sensitizing agent. It may improve ovulation rates, but no conclusive evidence that D-chiroinositol has an effect on BMI, waist-hip ratio, or blood pressure, on hormonal parameters except for serum SHBG, on fasting glucose, fasting insulin, and lipids. What is the recommendation? Inositol in any form should currently be considered an experimental therapy in PCOS. The third drug is alpha-lipoic acid. It may act indirectly to maintain cellular antioxidant status by either inducing the uptake or enhancing the synthesis of endogenous low molecular weight antioxidants or antioxidant enzymes. Oral ALA may improve insulin sensitivity in the peripheral tissue and may help in maintaining glycemic control in patients with diabetes. So the mechanism of action relies on the property of stimulating glucose uptake through an intracellular redistribution of GLUT1 and GLUT4 transporters. Few studies have actually analyzed the effects of administration of ALA as a unique treatment in PCOS subjects. And at a dose of 400 milligram, it was found to improve triglycerides, insulin sensitivity, menstrual frequency, and parameters of liver function. And coming to incretin-based therapies, so you have the GLP-1 receptor agonists like liraglutide, exenatide, dulaglutide. So they act by stimulation of insulin secretion, inhibition of glucagon secretion, and suppression of food intake and appetite. So there was a study on the potential role of incretin-based therapies for polycystic ovarian syndrome, a narrative review of current evidence. So this is the evidence for liraglutide. A lot of small studies have been done, and they had used it mainly in obese patients, especially with a higher BMI. The dosage used varied from 1.2 to 1.8 milligrams of liraglutide once daily. And in majority of them, the BMI reduced significantly. It also reduced the visceral adipose tissue. It was superior to metformin in reducing waist circumference. And it also improved glucose homeostasis after oral glucose tolerance test. It also reduced the liver fat content by 44%, the visceral adipose tissue by 18%, and the prevalence of NASH or NAFLD by 2/3. SHBG increased by 19%, free testosterone increased by 19% in the Frossing et al. Study. So in majority of them, weight reduction, and it did show benefit in terms of metabolic parameters. Similarly, effect was seen with exenatide. Exenatide with metformin combination was superior to exenatide monotherapy in improving menstrual irregularity, ovulation rate, free androgen index, and insulin sensitivity. A few studies have been there with sitagliptin also, and they also found that it decreased the peak glucose levels, decreased the visceral adipose tissue. It also improved the parameters of insulin resistance like HOMA-IR. So it does show some benefits. Of course, they're all short-term studies. They have used sitagliptin, alogliptin, vildagliptin have been used. What is the conclusion from this? There is a potential role of GLP-1 receptor agonist and DPP-4 inhibitors in the management of PCOS with significant improvements in the metabolic parameters, including substantial weight reduction and improved insulin sensitivity. These agents also improved the hormonal parameters through decreased free androgen and increased SHBG. They improved menstrual regularity, increased fertility with enhanced ovulation and pregnancy in obese women with PCOS. Coming to insulin sensitizers for improving the endocrine and metabolic profile in overweight women with PCOS. So comparative studies for overweight women with PCOS, both metformin combined with GLP-1 receptor agonist and metformin combined with TZDs appears superior to monotherapy in improving hyperandrogenemia. Metformin combined with TZDs could be particularly effective in promoting the recovery of menstruation. Metformin combined with GLP-1 receptor agonist has additional advantage in improving fasting glucose when compared with GLP-1 receptor agonist alone. TZDs is inferior to metformin in decreasing BMI. So coming to the pros and cons of insulin sensitizer therapy in PCOS, the pros include reduced insulin resistance and addresses an important component of the pathophysiology of PCOS. It's useful for treating hyperglycemia. Metformin can cause weight reduction and is associated with improvement in lipid profile. It's an option in patients with factor V laden mutations and other risk factors for coagulopathy, in whom E2 plus P combination pills may be contraindicated. Potential for use in adolescents with lean PCOS in whom lifestyle modification is likely to be ineffective. It has an excellent safety profile with few side effects, especially only B12 deficiency and maybe some diarrhea, etc. The cons include insulin sensitizing effect may not persist after discontinuing medication. Weight reduction is minor with metformin, TZDs may cause weight gain and peripheral lipogenesis. Cosmetic improvements with insulin sensitizers may be less marked than E2P combination pills, especially for acne and for that matter, hirsutism are less. Insulin sensitizers may induce ovulation with the risk of unwanted pregnancy unless used with contraception. Lean PCOS responds well to conventional E2 plus P combination pills in conjunction with anti-androgen medication. Insulin sensitizer or potential teratogen select patients may require frequent monitoring of liver and renal functions. TZDs have been associated with adverse CV events in adult patients, and there are insufficient studies of efficacy and long-term safety of insulin sensitizers in adolescents. To summarize the outcomes of insulin sensitizers in PCOS, metformin improves menstrual pattern, ovulation, hyperandrogenism, weight loss, and insulin resistance. Glitazone's action on menstrual pattern, hyperandrogenism, and insulin resistance. Inositol's on ovulation and insulin resistance. Alpha lipoic acid on menstrual pattern and insulin resistance. GLP-1 receptor analogs or agonist on hyperandrogenism and weight loss. So my take-home message, insulin resistance plays an important or a major role in the pathophysiology of PCOS. Tackling insulin resistance is an indispensable component in managing PCOS. Thank you for patient hearing.